Did you know that at this very moment, you have access to more knowledge than any human being in history? More than Socrates, more than Newton, more than the combined minds of the Renaissance. You can summon entire libraries, decode the structure of galaxies, study ancient philosophies, diagnose illnesses, learn any language, and watch civilizations rise and fall, all from the screen in your pocket. But here's the paradox. Despite all this knowledge, we are thinking less. Despite all this connection, we feel more alone. Despite all this intelligence, something in us is eroding. Have you felt it? That growing inability to focus? That jittery compulsion to check, to swipe, to scroll endlessly, as if salvation lies just one more post away? That strange hollowness after hours online, like you consumed everything but digested nothing? You are not imagining it. We are, in a very real way, becoming smarter and dumber at the same time, and the terrifying part is we don't even realize it. The internet was supposed to elevate us. It was meant to be the great equalizer, the infinite library of Alexandria, reborn in digital form. It promised enlightenment, creativity, community, and to a certain extent, it delivered. We've seen revolutions sparked through social media. We've watched obscure voices rise into global movements. We've witnessed breathtaking acts of creativity, genius, and solidarity born from people who had never even met. But here's the tension you can't unsee. The same tool that expands your mind is also fragmenting it. The same access that empowers you is also addicting you. The same technology that connects you is also rewiring your very sense of self. So what's happening? How did the gateway to human advancement become a mirror maze where we lose ourselves? Why, in an age of answers, are we asking fewer real questions? Why, in a time when knowledge is cheap and immediate, does wisdom feel like it's vanishing? And most hauntingly, are we choosing this? Or is something else choosing for us? Think about it. When was the last time you read a long article all the way through without skimming? When was the last time you sat in silence without instinctively reaching for your phone? When was the last time you learned something not just to share it or use it, but because it changed you? Now consider this. What if your thoughts are no longer your own? What if your curiosity has been hijacked? What if the internet isn't expanding your mind, but repackaging it, feeding it back to you in algorithmic fragments? This is not just a technological issue. It's a philosophical crisis. It's a question of what it means to think, to know, to be. We stand at the edge of an era where machines don't just serve us, they shape us. Where intelligence is no longer measured by depth, but by speed. Where the line between human and interface grows thinner each day. And as this transformation accelerates, you must ask yourself, are you becoming more informed or more manipulated? Are you growing wiser or just louder? Are you in control or just being carried along? The truth is uncomfortable. The answers are not easy, but the questions, they are essential. Because beneath this paradox lies something deeper, a hidden mechanism, ancient and primal, that the internet didn't create but exposed, amplified, and now exploits with merciless precision. To understand why the internet is making us both smarter and dumber, we must go beneath the surface, not into the code or the data, but into the human mind itself. Let's descend. The hidden problem and its psychological, philosophical roots. To understand what the internet is really doing to us, we must go where few dare to look, into the architecture of the self. Not the digital self you curate on screens, but the fractured, restless, vulnerable self that hides behind every scroll. This isn't just a story of technology. It's a story of psychology, of philosophy, of the ancient fault lines running through human nature, now illuminated in the cold light of the screen. Let's start with a simple truth. The human mind was not built for this world. Your brain, your beautiful, fragile, evolution-sculpted brain, was designed for survival in the savannas of prehistory, not the hyper-stimulated chaos of the digital age. It evolved to focus on slow-moving change, to solve problems with deep attention, to form meaning through silence and struggle. Now, that brain is being bombarded with more information in a single day than it once processed in a lifetime, and it's cracking. Not visibly, not loudly, but subtly, like erosion, like a glacier melting from the inside out. Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." The internet, in many ways, has become our favorite method of avoidance, a theater of endless stimulation, custom-built to distract us from the emptiness we fear might be waiting in silence. We do not seek truth online. We seek escape. We seek affirmation. We seek to be seen, but not truly known. The scroll is our modern prayer, the algorithm, our God, the feed, our reflection. But reflection without depth becomes distortion. And this is where the descent begins. Because the internet, for all its gifts, has tapped into something dark within us, something ancient and unresolved, the unbearable discomfort of the self. Nietzsche called it the abyss, the terrifying space that stares back when we stop distracting ourselves. Schopenhauer called it the will, a blind, restless force within us, always desiring, never satisfied. Sartre called it nausea, the raw, disorienting awareness of our own freedom, our own absurdity. And the internet? It offers us the perfect solution. Never face that space. Instead, we keep scrolling. We consume images of lives better than ours, arguments that reinforce what we already believe, dopamine hits packaged in 60-second bursts. We trade reflection for reaction, contemplation for consumption. Why? Because to slow down to really think is painful. To confront your own limitations, to sit with uncertainty, to ask, who am I without all this noise? That takes courage. And the internet, like a cunning magician, always offers a way out. Not a solution, just another distraction. But here's the catch. The mind adapts. The more we avoid stillness, the more unbearable stillness becomes. The more we consume shallow content, the harder it becomes to seek depth. Neuropathways are not philosophical. They don't care about truth. They care about efficiency. And the more you train your brain to expect instant gratification, the more allergic it becomes to effort. You are not weak. You are conditioned. And the conditioning is systemic. Aldous Huxley foresaw this in Brave New World, a society not oppressed by censorship, but drowned in distraction. Not ruled by pain, but pacified by pleasure. People would stop thinking not because they were forbidden, but because they forgot how. He warned us. We laughed. And then we built the exact world he described. But the consequences aren't just cognitive, they're existential. Because when you lose the ability to think deeply, you lose more than intelligence. You lose yourself. You become fragmented, pulled in 1,000 directions. You forget what truly matters. You begin to mistake noise for meaning. And slowly, silently, the part of you that once reached for something higher, truth, purpose, beauty, begins to dim. Viktor Frankl wrote, "When a person can't find a deep sense of meaning, they distract themselves with pleasure." And the internet has perfected that distraction. But what's most dangerous isn't the distraction itself. It's that we no longer recognize it as distraction. It's become the default, the background noise of modern life. We wake up and reach for our phones before our thoughts. We replace boredom with stimulation. We replace thinking with reacting. We replace being with scrolling. And then we wonder why we feel lost. This is the hidden crisis. Not that we are dumb, not that we are addicted, but that we are forgetting how to be human. The internet is not the villain, it's a mirror. But what it reflects back at us, our fears, our insecurities, our need for control, validation, attention, that is the real force pulling the strings. The real algorithm is psychological. It lives in you. And unless you see it, unless you name it, it will shape you in ways you never chose. But if this is the disease, what is the cure? To find that answer, we must look at what happens when these invisible forces are left unchecked. When minds, societies, and cultures surrender to the digital current without resistance. When the line between intelligence and illusion collapses, we must explore the unseen consequences. The unseen consequences. Now imagine this. You're walking through a library. Not just any library, a living, breathing cathedral of knowledge. Endless halls of books, ancient manuscripts, whispered wisdom from minds long dead. But something's wrong. You can't stay in one section for more than a few seconds. The floor beneath you moves. Doors open at random. Music blares. Lights flash. Voices shout contradictory facts in both ears. You try to read, to focus, to understand, but the library won't let you. It pulls you away. It seduces you elsewhere. Every time you try to go deeper, something shallow distracts you. This is your mind on the internet. You haven't lost your intelligence. You've lost your capacity for depth. And in that loss, there are consequences. Not loud, not immediate, but devastating. Subtle, systemic, silent. Let's talk about them. 1. The collapse of deep thinking. The brain is plastic, neuroplasticity, they call it. It adapts, it changes, it reshapes itself based on what it repeatedly does. If you train it to seek novelty every 10 seconds, that becomes its default. If you teach it to jump from headline to headline, from meme to video to feed, it learns not to linger, not to reflect, not to wrestle with complexity. We now consume information like fast food, quick, tasty, instantly forgettable. But deep thought is slow. It is uncomfortable. It requires silence, boredom, struggle, the very things the internet erases. In the words of Nicholas Carr, author of The Shallows, what the net seems to be doing is chipping away my capacity for concentration and contemplation. My mind now expects to take in information the way the net distributes it, in a swiftly moving stream of particles. And that stream is relentless. 2. The rise of echo chambers and algorithmic identity. You are not shown the truth online. You are shown what keeps you engaged. The algorithm doesn't care about balance. It cares about retention. If rage keeps you scrolling, rage it will serve. If fear keeps you watching, fear you will be fed. Over time, your world becomes smaller. Not physically, but perceptually. You begin to see only what confirms your beliefs. You stop encountering the other. You lose empathy. You lose perspective. You begin to think that you are your feed. And this is no accident. The architecture of the internet is not neutral. It nudges. It selects. It molds. Jean-Paul Sartre once said, "We are our choices." But what happens when our choices are subtly predicted, shaped, and influenced before we even make them? Are you still choosing? Or are you becoming an extension of the algorithm? 3. The commodification of attention and the death of presence. Attention is no longer something you control. It is something that is harvested, monetized, turned into data points for advertisers, for political campaigns, for corporations. Your gaze has become currency. Your clicks have become capital. And what do you lose in the process? Presence. The ability to be here, to be now. You've likely experienced it, that strange disassociation after hours online. You return to the real world, feeling foggy, irritable, distracted. Reality seems dull. Your body feels heavy. Your mind buzzes, but it isn't alive. This is the cost of a fragmented consciousness. Carl Jung warned of this fragmentation long before the internet. He called it the loss of the self, when the conscious mind is no longer tethered to something whole, integrated, or grounded. The internet doesn't just fragment your attention. It fragments your identity. You become many selves: the curated self, the reacting self, the scrolling self, the performative self. But beneath them all, the authentic self, the one that longs for meaning, silence, depth, begins to fade. 4. The infantilization of the adult mind. It's a harsh term, but a true one. Infantilization. We are becoming addicted to immediate gratification. We want answers now, stimulation now, resolution now. No ambiguity, no nuance, no patience. This is not how adult minds flourish. This is how they atrophy. Nietzsche spoke of the overman, the evolved human who creates their own values, who rises above herd instincts. But we are moving in reverse. We are becoming underman, dependent, reactive, algorithmically managed, and we don't even realize it. 5. The cultural death of boredom. Boredom is not the enemy. Boredom is the birthplace of insight. Some of the greatest discoveries, ideas, and artworks in human history were born from the void of boredom, from staring at a wall long enough to notice a crack that looked like something more, from silence long enough to hear your own voice. But now, boredom is intolerable. We flee from it instantly with entertainment, notifications, updates, infinite scroll. And in doing so, we rob ourselves of the fertile ground where imagination is planted. We become consumers of meaning, not creators of it. But here's the most dangerous consequence of all. You forget that there's another way to live. You forget what it feels like to think slowly, to read deeply, to be alone without being lonely. You forget that silence isn't empty, it's full of answers. You forget that your mind is not a machine to be optimized, but a garden to be tended. The internet did not take these things from you. It made it easy to give them away. And now we must ask, is there a way back? Not to the past, but to ourselves? Because if we are both becoming smarter and dumber, if we are both expanding and eroding, then the next step is not to unplug. It is to rebel, to reclaim what the machine cannot give you: depth, presence, wholeness. And to do that, you must become something rare, something dangerous, something free. The rebellion begins now. Rebellion, step 2. Embrace boredom as a portal. Boredom is not the enemy, it is the threshold. It's the space between distraction and insight, the uncomfortable pause where your mind begins to unclench, to stretch, to wander beyond the edges of stimulation. In the past, this boredom led to creativity, innovation, daydreams, revelations. Now, it triggers a reflex: grab the phone, escape, scroll. But if you sit with it, truly sit with it, you'll begin to notice something strange. Thoughts, not injected by a feed, not curated by an algorithm, but yours. Let them come. The rebellion begins when you stop outsourcing your inner life to machines. Rebellion, step 3. Think dangerously. Thinking, real thinking, is dangerous. Not because it causes harm, but because it disrupts comfort. It forces you to confront what you've absorbed passively, what you've believed without questioning. Philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer argued that most people would rather die than think, because to think, to deeply inquire, is to face discomfort, contradiction, and complexity. But this is your superpower in the digital age. Ask the forbidden questions. Why do I believe what I believe? Is this thought truly mine or something I picked up online? What parts of myself have I neglected because they don't perform well? Don't just consume knowledge, wrestle with it. Chew it, challenge it, let it haunt you. This is how minds evolve, not through downloads, but through inner revolt. Rebellion, Step 4. Curate your digital environment like a philosopher's study. Most people treat their online lives like junk drawers, cluttered, reactive, chaotic. You must become a gardener of inputs. Who do you follow? What do you consume? Does it expand your consciousness or shrink it? Imagine your feed like a temple. Only allow in what serves your growth. Only engage with what invites you into thought, not just reaction. Delete apps. Block distractions. Unsubscribe from noise. Not because you're weak, but because you're strong enough to choose stillness in a world addicted to movement. Rebellion. Step 5. Seek depth over dopamine. Your brain loves novelty, but your soul craves meaning. And meaning is forged in friction, in going deep, in staying with the difficult thought, the slow book, the unresolved question. The greatest thinkers in history, Kierkegaard, Simone Weil, Camus, Jung, didn't find answers in speed. They found them in struggle, in solitude, in silence. Ask yourself, when was the last time you truly wrestled with an idea for weeks? When was the last time you read something that made you cry or sit in stunned silence? That is where you must return. Not for nostalgia, but for survival. Rebellion, Step 6. Disconnect to reconnect. This is not about abandoning the internet. It's about refusing to be owned by it. Unplugging isn't a retreat. It's a recalibration. It's telling your nervous system, you are not prey. You are not meant to be on alert every second of every day. Go into nature. Write by hand. Have a real conversation with someone with no screens in sight. Let your nervous system remember what calm feels like. Because from that calm, something awakens. Clarity, intuition, originality. The things that can't be downloaded. The things that make you human. And finally, rebellion, Step 7. Remember, you are not a machine. You are not here to optimize. You are not a brand. You are not a series of metrics. You are a mystery, a story, a symphony. And if you don't choose to reclaim your mind, someone else will always be writing the music for you. Jung believed that the path to wholeness begins by descending into the unconscious, facing the shadow, the parts of ourselves we've disowned. The internet, in many ways, is our collective shadow. It holds our fears, our cravings, our projections. To reclaim ourselves, we must face it not with denial, but with awareness, with boundaries, with intention. This is the rebellion, not against technology, but against unconsciousness, against fragmentation, against forgetting who you are. You don't have to live like this. You can slow down. You can think deeply. You can feel fully. You can remember what it means to be awake. And if you do, if enough of us do, then maybe the internet will not be our downfall, but our mirror. A mirror we dared to look into. And from it, we remembered ourselves. But there is one final layer, one last shattering insight that changes everything. Let's go there. To the ultimate truth. Close your eyes for a moment. Not to shut out the world, but to return to the place before the noise. Before the notifications. Before the screens. Before the avalanche of content that buried your own voice. Now, listen. Not to me. Not to the algorithm, but to the silence beneath your thoughts. Can you feel it? That faint flicker of the presence that remains when everything else is stripped away. The you that existed before your feed knew your name. Before you learned to perform, to scroll, to seek yourself in pixels. That presence is the final frontier. And it holds a truth that the internet can never give you. A truth that explains why this entire contradiction being smarter and dumber is not a glitch. It is a revelation. The ultimate truth is this: the internet is not changing us. It is revealing us. It is not the internet that made us crave attention. It simply revealed how desperate we were to be seen. It did not create our insecurity. It just handed us a mirror and made sure we never looked away. It didn't invent comparison, envy, loneliness, or distraction. It exposed the fractures we've always carried and magnified them to global scale. And in that exposure, we stand naked before ourselves. This is the unbearable intimacy of the digital age. We are being shown who we really are. The question is, can we bear to look? Think of Plato's allegory of the cave. Prisoners chained from birth, staring at shadows on a wall. They believe the shadows are reality because it's all they've ever seen. Now imagine you are one of those prisoners. Except the shadows aren't cast by firelight anymore. They're curated by code, personalized, endless, addictive. You spend your life staring at them, believing they are life, until something in you whispers, "This isn't it." That whisper is what brought you here. And the moment you turn away from the shadows, when you question, resist, rebel, that is the beginning of awakening. But what you see when you awaken isn't a digital prison. It's the self, in its full complexity, beauty, darkness, and power. The internet did not diminish you. It made visible all the parts of you you once kept hidden. The hunger to matter, the fear of missing out, the longing for certainty, the craving for belonging, the terror of stillness. It exposed your shadow, and now you must decide. Will you integrate it or let it rule you? Carl Jung taught that the path to wholeness lies not in becoming pure, but in becoming whole. Not in eliminating the dark, but in confronting it, learning to walk with it. The internet is a portal to the collective unconscious. It's not evil, it's a mirror with infinite faces. It reflects the sacred and the profane, the profound and the pathetic, the divine spark of human creativity and the abyss of its self-destruction. And you are the interpreter. You are the one who decides whether that mirror becomes a weapon or a window. So here is the deepest paradox of all. The internet is making you smarter and dumber because it is making you more you. More distracted if you're prone to escapism. More reactive if you fear silence. More performative if you seek approval. More insightful if you dare to go inward. It is not the tool that defines you. It is how you wield it. You can choose to let it flatten you into a caricaturian avatar of opinion, identity, and outrage. Or you can use it to explore the mystery of being alive in an age where everything is visible and yet so little is seen. You can use it to feed your ego, or to dismantle it. You can use it to escape yourself, or to find yourself. The truth that changes everything is this: you were never supposed to keep up. Not with every headline, not with every trend, not with the infinite scroll of curated lives and synthetic outrage. Your worth is not measured in metrics. Your mind is not a machine. Your soul is not a brand. You are here to wake up, to remember, to feel. And if the internet, this overwhelming, chaotic, miraculous force, can do anything for you, let it be the friction that forces you back into your own aliveness. Because beneath the noise, beneath the dopamine, beneath the code, there is a stillness that cannot be programmed, a truth that cannot be fed to you, a wisdom that no algorithm can touch. That stillness is you. So take the final step. Turn off the screen. Step into silence. Not to escape the world, but to re-enter it with new eyes. Let your mind be still enough to hear your own voice again. Let your soul be deep enough to hold the questions that have no answers. Let your presence be powerful enough to exist without performance. This is the ultimate rebellion. This is the final freedom. And it cannot be streamed, downloaded, or liked. It must be lived.